The Arizona heat beat down like hammers on anvils, each ray of sun a blow against the cracked earth. Dust devils spun across the flatlands, ghostly dancers in a land that had forgotten mercy. The mountains in the distance wavered behind sheets of rising heat, their peaks like broken teeth gnawing at a bone-white sky. The smell of sage and creosote hung thick in the air, mixed with something darker. Ash. Decay. The memory of violence. Thomas Garrett rode with his shoulders hunched forward, his body moving with the rhythm of his mare's gait. He hadn't spoken aloud in 3 days, not since leaving the last town where whiskey-soaked voices had mentioned her name. Amma. A Chiricahua woman, they'd said. Taken by traders heading toward the border. Worth good money, they'd laughed. Worth her weight in silver to the right buyer. He'd killed his drink then. Left coins on the bar. Walked out into the night without looking back. His rifle rested across his saddle, loaded and ready. A Bowie knife hung at his belt, its leather sheath worn smooth from years of use. His face was weathered, lined with scars both seen and hidden, a map of a life spent in places most men avoided. Beneath his hat, his eyes were the color of winter storms, cold and distant, except when they remembered. He remembered Amma. 13 years ago, when he'd been nothing but a boy with a rifle and a bounty on his head for a killing he hadn't committed. Her family had found him bleeding in an arroyo, half dead from thirst and fever. They could have left him. Should have. His kind had brought nothing but suffering to hers. But Amma's father had lifted him onto a travois. Amma herself, barely more than a girl then, had pressed water to his cracked lips and sung songs in a language that sounded like wine through canyon walls. She'd sat beside him through the fever dreams, her hand cool on his forehead, anchoring him to life when death had seemed easier. He owed her everything. And debts like that didn't expire. The settlement appeared as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of blood and copper. But something was wrong. The air tasted of char and iron. Birds circled overhead, black shapes against the dying light, their calls sharp and hungry. Thomas urged his mare forward, his hand moving to his rifle. As he crested the low rise, the scene unfolded before him like a nightmare made manifest. The trading post had been torn apart. Walls collapsed inward, roofs caved in, flames still licking at scattered timbers. Bodies lay in the dirt, twisted and still. A wagon sat overturned, its contents spilled across the ground like entrails. Crows hopped among the wreckage, pecking at things Thomas tried not to see. He dismounted slowly, boots hitting the ground with barely a sound. His mare snorted, nervous, smelling death. He tied her to a post that still stood, then moved forward with his rifle raised. The dead were mostly men. Traders, by their dress. Leather vests, wide belts heavy with tools and weapons now stripped away. Their throats had been opened, clean cuts, efficient. Someone had known what they were doing. But there were others. A woman, her dress torn, eyes staring at nothing. An old man slumped against a water trough, his chest dark with blood. And near the remains of what might have been a holding pen, a young boy, no more than 10, his small hand reaching toward a wooden horse that lay just beyond his grasp. Thomas's jaw tightened. He'd seen this before. Raids disguised as business transactions. Men who dealt in flesh, meeting men who stole it. When deals went bad, everyone bled. A sound. Faint. A scraping, like something being dragged. He moved toward it, rifle ready, his steps careful. Behind a collapsed section of wall, he found an older woman, native, her leg trapped beneath a beam. Blood pooled beneath her, but her eyes were still fierce, still alive. She saw him and tensed, reaching for something, a rock, anything. "I'm not here to hurt you," Thomas said quietly, lowering his rifle. "Let me help." She studied him, breath coming in short gasps. Then she spoke, her voice hoarse. "You're too late. They took her. The one who fought. The one who killed 3 of them with her bare hands before they got chains on her. Thomas's heart hammered against his ribs. Which way? The woman's eyes flickered toward the mountains. West. Through Devil's Canyon. 6 men. Maybe 7. They're taking her to the auction at Copper Springs. 3 days from now. He knelt beside her, began working to lift the beam. What's your name? Desba. I was her aunt. I am her aunt. She coughed, blood flecking her lips. She told me about you once. The white boy her father saved. The one who cried in his sleep and called for his mother. Thomas paused, the beam half lifted. She remembered that? Desba's eyes softened, just a fraction. She remembered everything about you. Said you had kind eyes. Said you were the only white man she'd ever met who looked at her like she was human. He got the beam off her leg, began tearing strips from his shirt to bind the wound. Can you ride? No. But you can. Go. Find her. I'll get you to safety first. There is no safety. Desba grabbed his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. There are more coming. Others who want revenge for what she did. If you stay, you die. If you go now, maybe you save her. Maybe. Thomas looked toward the mountains, then back at Desba. There's a mission, 10 miles south. Can you make it that far if I get you on a horse? She nodded slowly. I can make it to hell and back if it means Alma lives. He lifted her carefully, her weight barely anything, and carried her to his mare. The horse shifted but held steady as he settled Desba in the saddle. He tied her in place with rope, making sure she wouldn't fall. The padre at the mission owes me, Thomas said. Tell him Thomas Garrett sent you. He'll help. Desba looked down at him, and for a moment, something like respect crossed her face. You won't catch them before the auction. But maybe you can stop what comes after. I'll catch them. Then you're either brave or stupid. Maybe both. She took the reins he handed her. Her mother named her Alma because it means water. Life. Don't let her die in the desert like dust. Thomas watched her ride south, swaying but determined. Then he turned west, toward the mountains that were already swallowing the last of the sun's light. He had no horse now. But he could run. He'd learned that from Alma's people, how to cover ground on foot, how to read the land, how to move like a shadow. He'd learned many things from them. Now he'd use every one. The stars emerged overhead, cold and distant. Somewhere beneath them, Alma was in chains. Somewhere, men were congratulating themselves on a prize captured. They didn't know him. Didn't know what he'd become in the years since that boy in the arroyo had opened his eyes and chosen to live. He checked his rifle, his pistol, his knife. Then Thomas Garrett began to run, his boots eating up the miles, his breath steady, his purpose absolute. The desert stretched before him, endless and indifferent. But he wasn't running through the desert. He was running through time itself, back toward a debt unpaid, forward toward a reckoning long overdue. The night was cold, the kind that seeped into bones and made joints ache. Thomas ran for hours, his body a machine driven by will alone. The trail was clear enough. 6 horses, one carrying double weight. They weren't trying to hide their path. Men like that never did. They believed the emptiness would protect them, that the desert was too vast, too cruel for anyone to follow. They were wrong. By dawn, he'd covered 20 miles. His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but he didn't slow. He stopped only to drink from his canteen, to check the tracks, to ensure he was still heading true. The sun rose like a furnace being lit, and the temperature climbed fast. He found their first camp just after noon. The ashes were still warm. Empty whiskey bottles lay scattered around, and the marks in the dirt told stories he wished he couldn't read. A torn piece of cloth caught on a mesquite bush. Dark blue, the color of sky before a storm. He remembered Amma wearing something that color once, when they were young, when the world seemed less broken. He took the cloth, folded it carefully, and put it in his pocket. The trail led into Devil's Canyon, a crack in the earth 20 miles long and deep enough to hide the sun for hours at a time. The walls rose steep on either side, red rock layered like ancient pages. It was beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Flash floods had carved this place. Men had died here, their bones scattered among the stones. Thomas entered the canyon as afternoon shadows began to creep across the ground. The air was cooler here, damp somehow, despite the desert all around. His hand stayed near his pistol. This was ambush country. He moved carefully, checking every boulder, every blind turn. The hoofprints continued straight, confident. They weren't expecting pursuit. Why would they? A lone woman, no family left to claim her, no law that would care. In their minds, she was already sold, already forgotten. 3 miles into the canyon, he found the second camp. This one more recent. Hours old, maybe less. A cook fire still smoldering. Coffee grounds scattered. And there, pressed into the soft dirt near the fire, a handprint. Small, slender fingers. Amma's hand. Beside it, scratched into the dirt with a stick or a finger, a symbol. A circle with 4 lines radiating out. North, south, east, west. Her father had taught them both that symbol. It meant, here. It meant, I exist. It meant, remember me. She knew someone was coming. Somehow, she knew. Thomas's chest tightened. He knelt, traced the symbol with his finger, then stood and kept moving. The canyon narrowed ahead, the walls closing in like the earth was trying to swallow itself. This was the dangerous part. If they'd left a man behind to watch their back trail, this is where he'd be. Thomas climbed. The rock face was steep but not impossible. He found handholds, footholds, pulled himself up 50 feet until he was above the canyon floor. From here, he could see ahead, could spot movement before being spotted himself. And there, half a mile distant, he saw them. 6 riders moving single file through the narrow passage. And on the last horse, slumped forward but still upright, her dark hair falling across her face, was Amma. Something in Thomas's chest both broke and hardened. She was alive. Bruised, bound, but alive. He watched them disappear around a bend, then climbed down and followed. The distance between them was closing. By nightfall, he'd be close enough. By midnight, he'd make his move. The sun died slowly, bleeding out across the western sky. Thomas kept to the shadows, moving like smoke. He'd learned patience in hard years. Learned that rage without control was just noise. What he needed now was silence. Precision. The kind of violence that left no room for error. As darkness fell complete, he saw their campfire ahead. Heard voices, rough laughter. The smell of beans and bacon drifted on the air. They were celebrating. Another successful hunt. Another payday coming. Thomas circled wide, approaching from the north where the canyon wall offered cover. He could see them now, 6 men as Desba had said. 5 clustered around the fire, passing a bottle. The 6th sat apart, watching Amma where she lay on the ground, her wrists and ankles bound with rope, a gag in her mouth. The guard was young, nervous. He kept looking at her, then away, then back again. Thomas could read the conflict in the boy's posture. Some part of him knew this was wrong. But not enough of him to do anything about it. Thomas drew his knife. The blade caught starlight for just a moment, then disappeared back into shadow. He moved closer. 10 feet. 5. The guard still hadn't turned. Thomas could hear him breathing, could see his hand trembling slightly where it rested on his pistol. "I'm sorry," Thomas whispered, and drove the knife home. The guard jerked once, tried to cry out, but Thomas's hand was over his mouth. The boy's eyes went wide, then dim, then empty. Thomas lowered him silently to the ground, took his pistol, his rifle. Now he had 3 guns. Better odds. Amma's eyes snapped open. She'd heard something, sensed something. She turned her head and saw him. Saw Thomas crouched in the darkness like a ghost made flesh. Her eyes widened, then filled with something he couldn't name. Hope. Disbelief. Recognition. He put a finger to his lips. She nodded slightly. Thomas cut her bonds quickly, pulled the gag from her mouth. She drew breath, deep and shuddering, but stayed silent. Smart. Always smart. "Can you walk?" he mouthed. She nodded, though he could see her wince as she moved. They'd hurt her. Of course they had. Men like that always did. He handed her the guard's pistol. She took it without hesitation, checked the chamber with practiced ease. Her father had taught her that too. How to shoot. How to kill when killing was necessary. They moved together into the darkness, away from the fire, toward the canyon wall where shadows pooled deepest. Behind them, one of the men by the fire stood, stretched. "Hey, Martin. You fall asleep over there?" Silence. "Martin?" Thomas and Amma froze. They were 30 yards out now, but not far enough. Not nearly far enough. "God damn it, Martin, if you're touching that squaw." The man walked toward where the guard had been sitting. Found the body. Found the blood. His scream shattered the night. "Run," Thomas said. They ran. Gunfire erupted behind them, muzzle flashes bright in the darkness. Bullets whined off rock, sprayed dust and stone chips. Thomas fired back without aiming, just to keep them down, to buy seconds. Amma ran beside him, her breathing ragged but steady. She'd always been strong. Stronger than she looked. Stronger than anyone gave her credit for. They hit the canyon wall and began to climb. It was madness in the dark, handholds barely visible, every step a gamble. But staying on the canyon floor meant death. At least this way they had a chance. Below, the men were shouting, organizing. Torches flared to life. They'd be coming soon. Thomas and Amma climbed 50 feet, 70, until they reached a ledge barely wide enough to stand on. They pressed against the wall, breathing hard, listening. Spread out. They can't have gone far. Who the hell is that? Who killed Martin? Don't matter who. They're dead when we find M. Amma touched Thomas's arm, leaned close. Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from days of screaming, days of the gag. "You came." "Always," he said. "I told you I would. That last day, before you left with your father. I told you if you ever needed me." "I remember." Her hand tightened on his arm. "I never forgot." Below, torchlight swept back and forth. They were searching methodically, checking every shadow, every crevice. "We need to keep moving," Thomas said. "This ledge leads east. If we can reach the canyon rim before dawn, we can lose them in the hills. I can make it. I know you can." They moved along the ledge, inches at a time, the drop to their left a mouth of darkness ready to swallow them. Hours passed in near silence, just the scrape of boots on stone, the occasional rattle of a pebble falling into the void. By the time the sky began to pale, they'd reached the canyon's eastern edge. The land opened up before them, hills and mesas stretching toward a horizon still hidden in shadow. Behind them, voices still called, but more distant now. The men were still searching the canyon floor, hadn't thought to look up. Thomas and Amma collapsed in the shelter of a boulder cluster, their bodies shaking with exhaustion. Alma's face was drawn, her lips cracked and bleeding. Dark bruises marked her cheeks, her arms. Her dress was torn in places, stained with dirt and blood. "Let me see," Thomas said gently, reaching for her arm where the rope burns were worst. She pulled back instinctively, then forced herself to still. "I'm fine. You're hurt. I'm alive. That's what matters." But she let him examine the wounds, let him tear strips from his shirt to bandage the worst of them. As he worked, she studied his face. "You look older. Feel older too. But your eyes. They're the same. Still kind." She paused. "Still sad." He tied off the last bandage. "We should keep moving. They'll figure out we climbed eventually." "Thomas." She caught his hand. "Thank you. For coming. For finding me. I thought," her voice broke. "I thought no one would come." "I'll always come," he said. "No matter what. No matter where." The sun broke over the horizon, flooding the world with harsh light. And in that light, Thomas saw her fully for the first time in 13 years. She'd grown into her beauty, the angles of her face sharper now, her eyes holding depths he'd only glimpsed before. But there was pain there too. Fresh wounds layered over old scars. What had she survived in those years? What had the world done to her? "Where do we go?" she asked. Thomas looked north, toward the distant mountains. "I know a place. Old mining town, abandoned now. We can hole up there, rest, figure out our next move. They'll follow. Let them." His voice went hard. "I'm tired of running. Tired of watching people I care about get hurt while men like that walk free." Alma smiled then, thin and fierce. "Good. Because I'm tired of it too." They walked through the morning heat, two figures against the vastness. Behind them, the canyon held secrets and bodies. Ahead, somewhere in the wavering distance, lay whatever came next. The abandoned mining town rose from the desert like bones from a shallow grave. Silver Ridge, it had been called, back when men still believed this land held fortunes waiting to be dug from the earth. But the silver had run out, and the water had followed, and now all that remained were skeletal buildings and rusted equipment slowly being reclaimed by sand and wind. Thomas and Alma reached it as the sun climbed toward noon, the heat so intense it seemed to have weight. They moved through the empty streets like ghosts visiting their own future, their footsteps echoing off warped boards and crumbling adobe. "This one," Thomas said, pointing to a building that had once been a saloon. The roof was mostly intact, and the walls still stood strong enough to offer shelter. He pushed through the door, gun drawn, but nothing moved inside except dust motes dancing in shafts of light. Alma followed him in, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. The bar still stood along one wall, bottles long empty lined up like soldiers awaiting orders that would never come. Tables lay overturned. A piano sat in the corner, several keys missing, the wood bleached and split. "We can rest here," Thomas said. "It's defensible. Only 2 entrances, and we can block one." They spent the next hour fortifying. Thomas dragged furniture to barricade the back door while Alma positioned herself at the front window, watching the street for any sign of pursuit. Her hands moved with calm efficiency, checking her stolen pistol, counting rounds. 6 bullets. Not many, but enough if she made them count. When the work was done, Thomas brought out what little food he had left. Dried meat, hardtack, a canteen half full of water. They shared it in silence, too tired for conversation, too aware of how precarious their situation remained. "Tell me what happened," Thomas said finally. "How did they take you?" Alma chewed slowly, her eyes distant. "I was with a trading caravan. We were heading east to Santa Fe. Good people, or so I thought. But one of them, the wagon master, he had debts. The kind you pay in flesh. She touched her bruised wrist. They came at night. The mescaleros I was traveling with fought. Died fighting. I killed 2 of them before they got ropes on me. Desba said you killed 3. 3 then. Another at the trading post. She looked at her hands. I've become good at killing. Survival teaches you things you'd rather not learn. Thomas nodded. He understood that too well. Your father? Dead. 2 winters ago. Fever took him. Her voice remained steady, but pain flickered behind her eyes. My mother followed him a month later. Couldn't live with his ghost, couldn't live without his presence. I'm sorry. Don't be. They died free. That's more than most of us get. She turned to look at him fully. What about you? What have you been doing these 13 years? Surviving. Drifting. Tried to make an honest living, but honest work doesn't pay when your name is attached to old warrants. He smiled bitterly. Turned out the man I supposedly killed wasn't dead at all. Showed up drunk at a hanging 3 years after they'd put a price on my head. But by then the reward was already posted, and bounty hunters don't care about innocence. They care about gold. So you ran. I ran. Worked cattle drives. Did some scouting for the army, though that left a bad taste. Mostly I tried to stay invisible. He paused. But I always kept my ear to the ground. Always listened for news about you, about your people. And when you heard I'd been taken? I rode hard. Killed anyone who got in my way. He said it simply, stating fact. I made a promise to you once, Amma. I keep my promises. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, you were just a boy when you made that promise. Barely 16. I was 14. We were children playing at being grown. Maybe. But some promises you make with your whole soul. Those don't expire. The afternoon wore on. They took turns sleeping, one always awake, always watching. Thomas took first watch, his rifle across his knees, his eyes scanning the empty street beyond the window. He must have looked away for just a moment, because when Amma's hand touched his shoulder, he startled, reaching for his gun. Easy, she said softly. It's just me. Your watch is over. I wasn't sleeping. You were. And you were dreaming. She sat beside him, her shoulder touching his. You called out. A woman's name. Thomas's jaw tightened. That was a long time ago. Tell me. He shouldn't. There was no point in dredging up old pain. But something about the way she looked at him, patient and present, made the words come anyway. Her name was Catherine. Merchant's daughter. I worked on her father's ranch for 2 seasons. She was kind to me. More than kind. He stared at his hands. I thought maybe I'd found something. A life. A future. What happened? Her father found out I had a bounty on my head. Turned me in for the reward. His voice went flat. Catherine watched them drag me away in chains. Didn't say a word. Didn't even look sorry. But you escaped. Obviously. He shifted, uncomfortable with the memory. Killed 2 bounty hunters doing it. Added to my tally. Added to my reputation. Amma was quiet. Then, love makes us stupid sometimes. Were you ever stupid? She smiled, sad and knowing. Once. A warrior from another band. Strong, handsome, all the things a girl dreams about. He promised me the sky and stars. Her smile faded. He left when the army came. Took the strongest horses and ran north. Left his people, his family. Left me. I'm sorry. Don't be. I learned something valuable. Strength without loyalty is just selfishness with muscles. They sat together as the sun began its descent, painting the world in shades of amber and rust. For a moment, in that soft light, they weren't fugitives hiding from men with guns. They were just two people who'd survived long enough to find each other again. "Do you think they're still following us?" Amma asked. "Yes. Men like that don't let go easily. We humiliated them. Killed one of their own. They'll want blood. How many do you think are left?" "5, if we're lucky. 6 if they picked up help at one of the settlements. And we have you with a rifle, a pistol, and a knife." "Me with 6 bullets. 7, Thomas corrected. "There's one in the chamber of my pistol." She laughed, a real laugh, and the sound of it in that dead place was like water in the desert. 13 bullets between us and 5 to 6 armed men. I like those odds." "You're lying." "Yes. But I've survived worse odds." "So have you." They were still sitting like that, shoulders touching, when the first bullet shattered the window above their heads. They dove in opposite directions, Thomas rolling behind the bar, Amma scrambling toward an overturned table. More gunfire erupted, a crescendo of violence that shattered the silence and sent wood splinters flying like shrapnel. "How many?" Amma shouted over the noise. Thomas risked a glance toward the window. 5 figures were spread across the street, using rubble and old wagons for cover. 5. At least 5. So we got lucky. That's your definition of lucky? She grinned, fierce and wild, and fired twice. One of the figures jerked backward, dropped. For now. Thomas rose enough to aim properly, squeezed off 3 shots in quick succession. Another man screamed, went down clutching his leg. 3.5. The return fire intensified. The front wall of the saloon was disintegrating, holes appearing like angry mouths. The piano exploded in a cascade of wood and wire. Bottles behind the bar shattered, raining glass. "We can't hold here," Thomas shouted. "Back door?" "Barricaded." "Then we unbarricade it." They moved together, keeping low, bullets chasing them across the room. Thomas reached the back door, began shoving furniture aside while Amma provided covering fire. Her 6 bullets became 4, became 2, became none. "I'm empty," she called. Thomas tossed her his pistol. 7 shots. "Make them count." The back door came free. Thomas kicked it open, revealing a narrow alley filled with debris. Not ideal, but better than being trapped. "Go," he yelled. Amma went through first, Thomas right behind her. They sprinted down the alley as bullets chewed up the ground at their heels. At the end, they turned left, then right, weaving through the skeleton town like rats through a maze. Behind them, boots pounded. Voices shouted. "Don't let them reach the horses." Thomas and Amma burst into an open area, what had once been the town square. A well stood in the center, its roof collapsed but the stone walls still solid. They took cover behind it, breathing hard, hearts hammering. "Horses?" Amma gasped. "Must have stashed some nearby." "They came prepared." "So did we." "Did we?" She checked the pistol. 6 rounds left. "You?" Thomas had his rifle. Counted the rounds in his pocket. 15. 21 bullets. Still bad odds. Still alive though. They heard the footsteps approaching from multiple directions. These men were smart, spreading out, cutting off escape routes. Thomas and Amma pressed their backs against the well, guns ready. A voice called out, harsh and mocking. "You've got nowhere left to run, boy. Give us the girl, and maybe we let you walk." Thomas recognized that voice. Silas Crow, the leader of the trading caravan. A man who'd built a fortune on human misery. You'll have to take her. Thomas shouted back. That's the plan. Silence. The terrible kind, where violence was gathering itself for the final blow. Then Amma whispered, Thomas. The well. He looked down. The shaft was deep, maybe 20 feet, but he could see handholds carved into the stone. And at the bottom, a faint gleam. Water. Not much, but some. Can you climb down? He asked. Watch me. Amma lifted her head, looked at him in the dim light. Why did it scare you? On the third day, they spotted smoke on the horizon. Not the dark, angry smoke of destruction, but the lazy gray of cook fires and civilization. Redemption, Thomas said. The town sat in a valley between two mesas, protected from the worst of the desert winds. It was bigger than Thomas remembered, more buildings, more people. Growth meant prosperity, but it also meant more eyes, more questions, more chances for someone to recognize his face or Amma's. They rode in slowly, drawing stairs. Thomas kept his hat low, his hand near his pistol. Amma sat straight in her saddle, her chin up, daring anyone to challenge her presence. The main street was busy with afternoon traffic. Wagons rolled past carrying supplies. Children chased each other between buildings. A dog barked. Normal life, the kind that seemed impossible after the past week. Thomas guided them to a building at the far end of town. A simple structure, wood and adobe, with a sign that read, Stone Supply. An older man stood on the porch, sweeping dust that would be replaced by more dust within the hour. He looked up as they approached, and his weathered face split into a grin. Thomas Garrett. Son of a bitch. Thought you were dead. Thomas dismounted, extended his hand. Still breathing, Jacob. Still trouble. Jacob Stone gripped his hand hard, then pulled him into an embrace. Trouble's the only thing that keeps life interesting. He released Thomas and looked at Amma. And who's this? Amma. A friend. A good one. Jacob studied her with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He saw the bruises, the torn dress, the way she held herself like someone expecting an attack. Understanding flickered across his face. Well, any friend of Thomas's has a place here. Come on inside. You both look like you could use a hot meal and a soft bed. The interior of the supply store was dim and cool, shelves stocked with everything from nails to flour to ammunition. Jacob led them through to the back, where a small living area opened up. Simple but clean. A table, chairs, a stove, 2 narrow beds. It ain't much, but it's yours for as long as you need it, Jacob said. He turned to Thomas. You in trouble? Real trouble? Always. But this time it might be following us. Jacob nodded slowly. How much following? We killed 6 men. Traitors. Slavers. Good riddance then. Jacob moved to the stove, began preparing coffee. Redemption doesn't welcome that kind. We had a run-in with slavers last year. They tried to set up an auction house at the edge of town. We burned it to the ground with them inside. Amma spoke for the first time since entering. You killed them? Every last one. This town was founded by people trying to escape their pasts. We don't judge where you came from. But we do judge what you do here. He poured coffee into 3 tin cups. You want sanctuary, you got it. But you got to earn your keep. Everyone works. Thomas accepted the coffee gratefully. What kind of work? I could use help with the store. And there's always construction. Town's growing faster than we can build. Jacob looked at Amma. You got any skills? I can ride, shoot, track, hunt, and kill men who deserve it. Jacob laughed, a deep belly laugh that shook his frame. Well, we might not need that last one immediately, but the rest sounds useful. There's a woman named Rachel who runs the stables. Always needs good hands. If you're interested. I'm interested. They spent the rest of the afternoon settling in. Jacob brought them soap and clean clothes, pointed them toward a bathhouse at the end of the street. Thomas went first, scrubbing away days of dust and blood and fear. The water turned dark around him, carrying away evidence of violence. When Amma emerged an hour later, she looked transformed. Her hair was clean and braided, hanging down her back like a black river. The dress Jacob had provided was simple cotton, but it fit her well. The bruises on her face were still visible, but they were healing. Thomas couldn't stop staring. She caught him looking and smiled. What? Nothing. Just, it's good to see you like this. Safe. I'm not safe. Neither are you. We're just less in danger for the moment. I'll take it. That night, Jacob cooked them dinner. Beef stew with real vegetables, bread that was only a day old, coffee that hadn't been stretched with chicory. They ate until they couldn't eat anymore, then sat around the table trading stories. Jacob had been a soldier once, same as Thomas's father. They'd served together in Mexico, survived battles that most men didn't. When the war ended, Jacob had drifted west, looking for a place where the past couldn't find him. Found redemption when it was just 3 buildings and a well, he said. Decided this was as good a place as any to stop running. Been here 15 years now. Seen it grow from nothing to something. Something worth protecting. You ever regret staying? Thomas asked. Jacob considered. Every day. But less than I'd regret leaving. Amma was quiet through most of the meal, but Thomas could see her relaxing, the tension slowly leaving her shoulders. She was safe here. Maybe not forever, but for now. When dinner was finished, Jacob showed them to their sleeping area. 2 beds separated by a thin curtain. I know you're both adults, Jacob said carefully. I don't care what arrangements you make. But the town's got eyes, and not everyone is as accepting as I am. Might be best to keep things discreet. Thomas nodded. Understood. Jacob left them alone. Thomas and Amma stood on opposite sides of the curtain, suddenly awkward. Well, Thomas said. Good night. Good night. But neither of them moved. The curtain was just cloth, nothing really. Thomas could push it aside, could cross the space between them. Could hold her the way he'd wanted to since that moment in the well. Thomas? Yeah. Thank you. For everything. You don't need to thank me. I do. Because you didn't have to come. You chose to. It was never a choice. Not really. Silence. Then Amma's hand appeared around the edge of the curtain, reaching for him. He took it, felt her fingers intertwine with his. Stay, she whispered. Just for tonight. I don't want to be alone. He pulled the curtain aside. She stood there in the dim light, vulnerable and strong in equal measure. He crossed to her, and she met him halfway. They lay down together on the narrow bed, fully clothed, just holding each other. No words. Just presence. 2 people who'd survived the unsurvivable, finding comfort in the simple fact of not being alone. Outside, redemption settled into sleep. Dogs barked. A baby cried somewhere. The normal sounds of life continuing. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Thomas Garrett felt something like peace. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm. Thomas worked at the supply store, learning inventory, helping customers, doing repairs on the building. Amma took to the stables naturally, her way with horses earning quick respect from Rachel and the other hands. They kept separate beds, separate spaces, maintaining the appearance of propriety. But most nights, one of them would cross that curtain, and they'd fall asleep tangled together, holding on like the world might try to tear them apart again. It probably would. But not tonight. The town accepted them, mostly. A few people whispered about the Indian woman and the wanted man, but Jacob's endorsement carried weight. And when word spread that they'd killed slavers, that bought them currency in a place built by people running from injustice, Thomas began to think maybe, just maybe, they could build a life here. It was a dangerous thought, the kind that made you vulnerable. But he couldn't help it. Watching Amma laugh with the stable hands, seeing her smile more easily each day, feeling her relax in his arms at night, it made him want things he'd never allowed himself to want before. A month passed. Then two. The danger they'd fled seemed distant now, like a bad dream fading in morning light. Thomas caught himself making plans. Thinking about buying land, building a house. Thinking about a future that stretched beyond the next sunrise. That's when the stranger rode into town. He came at dusk, a tall man on a black horse, his face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He tied his horse outside the saloon and went inside, and Thomas felt something cold settle in his gut. He'd seen men like that before. Men who carried death in their gun belts and didn't care who they aimed it at. Thomas found Jacob at the store. "We've got company." "Wrong kind." Jacob looked toward the saloon. "I saw him ride in." "Bounty hunter, you think? Or worse. You recognize him?" "No. But my gut says he's trouble." Jacob nodded slowly. "Go find Amma. Keep her close. I'll see what I can learn." Thomas went to the stables at a run. Amma was brushing down a chestnut mare, humming softly to herself. She looked up as he entered, and her smile faded when she saw his face. "What's wrong?" "Stranger in town." "Might be nothing. Might be something." She put down the brush, her hand moving instinctively to the pistol at her hip. Thomas had insisted she carry it, and now he was glad. "Where?" "Saloon. Jacob's going to scout him out." They waited in the stables as evening darkened into night. Other workers left, heading home to families and hot dinners. Soon it was just Thomas and Amma in the dim space, horses shuffling in their stalls, the smell of hay and leather all around. An hour passed. Then Jacob appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "His name's Dalton Webb. Professional bounty hunter out of Texas. He's asking questions about a man and a woman. Says there's a reward." Thomas's blood went cold. "How much?" "500. Each." It was a fortune. Enough to tempt even good people to do bad things. Amma's voice was steady. "What did you tell him?" "That I hadn't seen anyone matching that description." "But he's not stupid. He'll ask around. Someone will talk. Someone always does." Thomas thought fast. "Can we leave tonight? Get a head start?" "You could try. But Webb's got a reputation. He's patient. He'll watch the roads, wait you out. You run now, he'll know it's you. So what do we do?" Jacob was quiet for a long moment. "Then, we could kill him." The words hung in the air like smoke. Amma spoke first. "I won't let you risk your town for us. You've built something good here. We won't be the reason it falls apart." "It's not just about you," Jacob said. "It's about what this town stands for. We don't hand people over to bounty hunters. We don't sell out our own." "We're not your own," Thomas said quietly. "We're just people you were kind enough to help. You became our own the moment you started working beside us. The moment you proved you were more than your past." Jacob stepped closer, his eyes fierce. "I didn't build redemption to be another place where might makes right. Where men with guns take what they want. I built it to be different. Better." Thomas looked at Amma. She looked back. In her eyes, he saw the same conflict he felt. The desire to stay, to fight, to claim this fragile peace. And the knowledge that staying might destroy the very thing they were trying to protect. There's another option, Amma said slowly. We face him. Challenge him directly. That's suicide, Jacob said. Maybe. But it's honest. And if I die, I'd rather die standing than running. Thomas felt something break open in his chest. Pride. Fear. Love. All mixed together until he couldn't tell them apart. Together then, he said. We face him together. Jacob looked between them, then sighed. You're both fools. Brave fools, but fools nonetheless. He paused. When? Tomorrow. High noon. Let's make it official. Like a duel? Like a reckoning. They spent the night preparing. Cleaning weapons, checking ammunition, making sure every edge was sharp, every chamber loaded. They didn't sleep. Couldn't. The weight of what was coming pressed down too heavy. As dawn broke, Thomas and Amma stood together outside the stable, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and red. If this goes badly, Thomas said. It won't. But if it does. I need you to know. These past months, being here with you, it's been the closest thing to happiness I've ever known. Amma took his hand. Don't talk like we're already dead. I'm not. I'm just saying what needs to be said while I still can. She turned to face him fully. Then hear this. I love you, Thomas Garrett. I've loved you since we were children playing at the edge of the world. I've loved you through 13 years of distance and silence. And I'll love you whether we live through today or not. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of all the things he'd never learned how to say with words. When they broke apart, both had tears on their cheeks. I love you too, he whispered. Always have. Always will. The town square was empty when they walked out at noon. Word had spread, the way it always did in small places. Everyone knew what was happening. Most had barricaded themselves indoors, away from stray bullets and consequences. But some stood watching from windows and doorways. Silent witnesses to whatever came next. Dalton Webb stood in the center of the square, his black coat dusty from travel, his gun belt sitting low on his hips. He was older than Thomas expected, maybe 50, with gray streaking his hair and scars marking his face. A man who'd lived long in a profession that killed most young. Thomas Garrett, Webb called as they approached. Amma of the Chiricahua. 500 each, dead or alive. I'm here to collect. Thomas and Amma stopped 20 paces away. We're not going with you, Thomas said. Webb smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I expected you'd say that. Makes my job easier when they resist. 3 against 1, Amma said. Are you sure about those odds? 3? Jacob stepped out from the supply store, rifle in hand. 3. Webb's smile faded. You're making a mistake, old man. Wouldn't be the first time. For a long moment, no one moved. The wind kicked up dust, sent it swirling between them like ghosts dancing. Somewhere a shutter banged. A horse whinnied. Then Webb's hand dropped toward his gun. Thomas was faster. He drew and fired in one smooth motion, the bullet catching Webb in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. Amma's shot followed a heartbeat later, hitting Webb in the leg, dropping him to his knees. Jacob didn't fire. Didn't need to. Webb knelt in the dust, blood spreading across his shirt, his gun still in its holster. He looked up at them, and something like respect flickered across his face. You're better than I expected, he said through gritted teeth. Thomas walked forward slowly, his gun still trained on Webb. I'm going to give you a choice. You can ride out of here, go back to Texas, tell whoever hired you that we're dead. Or you can keep coming, and we'll make it true for you instead. They'll send others. Let them. We'll be ready. Webb considered, then slowly nodded. Help me up. Thomas hesitated, then reached down, pulled the bounty hunter to his feet. Webb swayed but stayed upright. You're making powerful enemies, Webb said. Already had them. What's a few more? Webb limped toward his horse, managed to pull himself into the saddle despite his wounds. He looked down at them, and when he spoke again, his voice was different. Quieter. For what it's worth, I hope you make it. Not many people get a second chance at living. Don't waste it. Then he rode out, heading east, leaving a trail of blood in the dust. The town stayed silent for another moment. Then slowly, people began to emerge. First one, then another, then dozens. They gathered in the square, looking at Thomas and Amma and Jacob with something Thomas had never seen directed at him before. Respect. Acceptance. Welcome. A woman stepped forward, elderly, her face lined with years. You stood for us. For what we believe. Thank you. Others echoed her. Thank you. Thank you. Jacob put a hand on Thomas's shoulder. Congratulations. You're officially part of redemption now. For better or worse. That night, the town held a celebration. Nothing fancy, just people gathering in the square, sharing food and drink and stories. Someone brought out a fiddle. Others joined with guitars and harmonicas. Music filled the air, joyful and alive. Thomas and Amma sat together on the edge of it all, watching. Her head rested on his shoulder. His arm wrapped around her waist. We survived again, she said softly. We did. How many more times you think we can do that? As many as we have to. She turned to look at him. I want to stay here. Build something. Stop running. So do I. Then let's do it. Let's claim this life. Make it ours. He kissed her forehead. Together. Always together. The music played on. The stars wheeled overhead. And in a small town called Redemption, two people who'd spent their lives running finally stopped. They were married a month later. Nothing fancy, just a simple ceremony in the town square with Jacob officiating and half of Redemption watching. Amma wore a white dress that Rachel had sewn special. Thomas wore his best shirt and actually managed to comb his hair. When Jacob pronounced them husband and wife, the whole town cheered. They built a house on the outskirts of town. Small but sturdy, with a porch facing west where they could watch the sunsets. Thomas worked the supply store with Jacob. Amma continued at the stables and started training horses to sell. Life developed a rhythm. Work during the day, evenings together, nights wrapped in each other's arms. They talked about maybe having children someday. Maybe expanding the house. Maybe growing old together in this place they'd claimed as home. A year passed. Then two. The past faded bit by bit, replaced by a present that felt solid, real. Thomas forgot what it was like to always be looking over his shoulder. Amma's nightmares came less frequently. They'd survived. And more than that, they'd learned to live. On the third anniversary of the day Webb had ridden into town, Thomas and Amma sat on their porch watching the sun die in glory. Her hand rested on her belly, where a new life was just beginning to grow. What do you think? She asked. Boy or girl? Doesn't matter. As long as they're healthy. If it's a boy, I want to name him after my father. And if it's a girl? She smiled. We'll figure it out. Thomas pulled her close, breathed in the scent of her hair, felt the steady beat of her heart. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The wind whispered through the sage. And Thomas Garrett, wanted man, killer, survivor, thought about all the paths his life might have taken. All the ways he could have died or been lost or given up. But he'd chosen this. Chosen her. Chosen a life built on hope instead of fear. The sun slipped below the horizon. Stars emerged one by one. And in the gathering darkness, Thomas whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" Amma asked. "For saving me. Then. Now. Always." She kissed him softly. We saved each other. And in that moment, in that place, it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.